Happy Halloween, everybody. In today's video, I am going to be showing you the book from Hocus Pocus, Winifred Sanderson's Book of Spells, and it has the eyeball that opens and closes, so it can be open or it can be closed like the book is sleeping, and then here's her calling for it and the eyeball can pop open. It is so cool. It's got the burnished snake down the side and the human fingers and the flesh look. I love it. The background's gorgeous. It's a black holographic. It just all is just so witchy, so Halloweeny. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. We are going to begin by actually starting with the eyeball. So we're going to just lay a bead of white acrylic down on a nail form backing and leave it there until it starts to get really pliable. Once it turns to what seems to be about a Play-Doh consistency, put it in your gloved hands on your finger and roll it into a perfect little sphere. Once it starts to where it's not, you can feel it isn't moving or pressing anymore, then you can be all done. Once it's completely cured, wrap it very tightly with some foil. I like to use something really flat and press it down as hard as I can. In my case, I was using just the bottom side of a fingernail clippers and then the bottom side of a tweezers just to really kind of get in there and flatten that foil. Now going with the brown acrylic that you're going to use to sculpt your book, we're going to be adding the eyelid over the top of the foil. Be careful that you don't sculpt the eyelid to be too big. The actual opening of where you can see the eye is a human eye shape. It's an almond shape. So it's really tempting on this sphere to sculpt your eyelid way larger than you need to, which is indeed what I did. After the eyelid has cured, then you can carefully open up that aluminum foil, kind of peel it back, pop it off. It'll probably rip a little bit. As long as your eyelid didn't go over the halfway point on your eye, you will be able to get that sphere back out, the white eyeball, but it may take just a little bit of kind of pulling at it and messing with it. You just got to get that little piece of foil loosened underneath the eyelid, and then all of a sudden the eyeball will just pop out. Be careful while you're doing this that you are not over, your eyeball's not going to roll away and you're going to lose it, because that would be unfortunate and you'd have to start this process over. So all of a sudden, just be prepared. The eyeball's going to roll away. Make sure that doesn't get away from you. After you've got your eyelid out, fit your eyeball back in it. If your eyelid does seem too large, as mine did, take an e-file and just carefully file away some of that extra bulk that's on there. And then as soon as you're done with that, we can start sculpting the book. This design is so cool, and actually the mechanism of it, while a little bit tedious, isn't that hard. So make sure you keep watching so that you can see the whole process of it. Now we're going to be sculpting the back cover of the book. So this is where you kind of decide how big it's going to be. Depending on how large you want it on the nail, obviously you have the opportunity to make it bigger or smaller at this point. But sculpt your rectangle with brown acrylic. And after that has cured, don't do this part too soon. You want to make sure that you give it enough time where that first layer is fully hardened. You're going to take some tan acrylic, some off-white, cream color, whatever you want to call it. Don't use bright white. You want the eyeball to be the only thing in this design that is that really bright white. So we're going to be using kind of a tea-stained color acrylic on cream color, and we're going to be adding the first layer of pages in this book of spells. And then after you have that first layer done, try to keep it as flat and as even as you can, and add a little bit of height to it. Don't go too crazy with the height, but you're just going to sculpt this nice little rectangle, and then you're going to attach your eyeball about the middle towards the right side of the page. Secure that with some clear acrylic right around the base of the eyeball. It doesn't have to be very clean necessarily. For the most part, this is going to be invisible in the final design. So use enough clear acrylic that it really holds it in place. Don't go up too far on the side, but if you fill in all the way around that base, it is perfectly fine. Now going back to your page color acrylic, we're going to just be adding a whole lot of height to the acrylic. When you're doing this, make sure that you leave an opening all the way around the eyeball, a thin opening. Use the tip of your brush to just sort of clean around it, and then all the way towards the end of the page. So you're leaving a kind of a big swoop out of the pages. That part, unfortunately, is necessary just to be able to get all the workings done on this side, but it is cool that it does work. So if you don't like the fact that you can see into the eyeball on the side of the book, your eyeball's probably going to end up needing to be stationary, or your eyelid will end up needing to be stationary, but that's not the worst thing. If that's how you prefer it, you just want to sculpt a cool Hocus Pocus book, that would be a different alternative, and you can skip all this eyeball business. After you have this done to this point, draw a little rectangle around your book on a piece of paper so that you know how big it is, and then draw an approximate hole for where the eyeball is. Then going back to your brown color of acrylic, we're going to do the first layer of the top cover of the book. Just kind of take it slow. Try to keep that hole for where the eyeball is open as best you can. If you are somebody that is comfortable and confident with an e-file, leaving that hole open isn't all of that vital. Leaving something of a hole open is a really good idea, but it doesn't have to be perfect. If you are not comfortable or confident with an e-file and e-filing something like this sounds like the worst idea to you, you have to be a little bit more diligent, or a lot more diligent, about leaving that hole in the middle open, and large enough too. So after you are happy with the size of your eye opening, and your book has been sculpted and everything is looking good, take your e-file and smooth it out. Even if my size of that eyeball opening was perfect, I still wanted to open that up a little bit and smooth it out just to kind of give it the right shape. So lay your book cover on top of the book with the eyelid in place just to see how it feels. If it feels like you can move your eyelid, you're good to go. If it feels like you cannot move your eyelid, take away more of the opening of the acrylic. It has to be significantly larger than what I originally anticipated in order for that eyelid to move freely. So again, after you open it up a little further, place your book cover back on top, play with the eyelid. Obviously, it's going to not hold its shape as well as it will in the end, but as long as it seems when you're just playing with it, it's like, you know what, that's going to work, then you can keep going. I also noticed in the process of fitting the book cover on top of the book that I didn't have quite enough height at the end of my pages, because the book is going to be a little thicker towards where that eyeball opening is on the side of the book than towards the spine. And so I just needed to add a little bit of like a ski jump on the end of those pages to get it to be the right height so that everything fit together properly. Just keep adding more acrylic where you need to. Adding the layers of the acrylic to the pages of the book are something that you're going to want to do in slow, meticulous layers. Do not smooth them down on the sides. As you can see, I have kind of like a sediment looking layered process going on the sides of the pages. That is what you want. You want to have that kind of layered look. It makes it look a lot more like pages that are maybe hand bound, hand cut, hand ripped, possibly from the era of the book. And then after you have all of those pages built up to where you think they should go, drill a little hole in the side of your eyeball, and then with some clear acrylic, you're going to be gluing a piece of wire into that hole. I'm using my tweezers to kind of help me hold that in shape or in place. And then after that has cured, you're happy with the security of it, slide a bead over the top of that wire, and then fit the eyelid. If you need to file a little curve away on the eyelid so that it fits nice and snug up to the bead and it is the right angle, go ahead and do that. After that fits well, place your eyelid back on top of the eyeball, and then using clear acrylic, attach the eyelid to the bead that's on the wire. Do not get any clear acrylic on the eyeball or anywhere else, just the eyelid and the bead. Cut off the extra wire from the end and add a little cap of acrylic so that the bead and eyelid do not come off. Make sure with this you don't get the acrylic on anything besides the wire, especially not the bead. Once that's done, you can refit your book cover on top of your book, play with the eyelid, make sure it works exactly how you dreamed, and then as long as everything fits properly, you can be good to go. If once again you need a little bit more acrylic on the one end to just give it that little bit more rise that you need, you can add that at this point. When you're testing to see if it fits, hold the book where it looks like it's exactly how you want it. Look at the side and see if there's a big gap. If there's a big gap, then that's when you know, oh, we need a little bit more acrylic here or a little bit more acrylic here, which is the case for what I'm doing. A lot of times with these projects, I do not have a 100% set in stone, measured out, everything has a exact plan when I begin. It's a figure it out as I go process, which can sometimes be, you know, when you see it, you're like, man, you know, why didn't I just do it up to the right height in the beginning? I didn't know what the right height was going to be. And instead of taking acrylic away because I put in too much, I usually like the add more and more and more until it's exactly how I want it philosophy of things. I'm going to do any more fittings I need with my eyeball, make sure it all fits right. Don't worry if there's a little bit of gap around the eye, extra top to bottom. Make sure it fits well side to side. And then after you're happy with it, before you attach it to the nail, I'm going to be adding on the lower eyelids and the skin above the eyelid that is moving. So I'm going to place those beads of acrylic on there, and I'm going to actually press them up over the top of the opening so that it kind of closes it. And like I said in the beginning of the video, it makes it more of that almond eye shape instead of a perfect circle. This is also going to mask some of the weirdness that's happening around the eyeball that you could see before. As you're adding these little bits, be careful not to fill in the hole that's underneath them. You want to just create this nice little eyelid opening. If you do happen to have acrylic that sneaks underneath, and you know, you probably will, you can always file that away with your e-file later. You could just kind of carve it away. But for right now, we just want to make sure we have that nice little eyeball opening. And then with black acrylic, I'm going to be creating the circle that goes around that eyeball. On the Hocus Pocus book, there is significantly more elements than what I was able to include in my Hocus Pocus book. If you were to make it so that the eye was not opening and was a little bit, more simple as far as the mechanisms go of this design, like I talked about in the beginning of the video, where you don't have to worry about like that C shape or making the eyeball separately or all of that stuff. If you were just going to go straight forward with the book, I would definitely scale down the size of the eyeball, because then you could add more of the details, the other details around it. Like you could add the little snakes that are curled up in the two outer corners of the book. Whereas I was unable to do that because I wanted to have that moving eyeball. I sacrificed another detail, and sometimes that happens. But if you do want to have all of that wonderful stuff happening, then maybe just make the eyeball a little smaller. It may not open, but if that was, depending on what your priorities were, that would be an option. So I have my black circle going all the way around there, and then I'm going to take more of the brown acrylic that I have been using throughout this whole video, and I'm going to lay down a thin layer of that across a section of the book cover. And then using the tip of my brush, I'm going to carve the hole or the little tracks for the seams. So this book is bound with human skin, and there's different places where the skin is sewn together and patchwork together. We're making the seams at this point. So just take the very tip of your brush and carve away the little areas where the two pieces of skin come together. Make these little seams going all the way across the whole entire front of the book. The surface doesn't need to be smooth or even or perfect. It can be, kind of pitted and rough looking. You can have so many different little funky areas on this. In fact, it adds so much. So don't worry about it. And as long as it looks, like rotted flesh, you're good to go. I'm going to take a brighter shade of brown, and I'm going to be adding some highlights across the book cover, just little bits here and there, kind of brightening things up a little. As I did with the interior of the pages of the books, I am going to be doing this brightening of the book cover in phases. So this first coat of the lighter color of acrylic is very thin. It's kind of a wash of color here and there over the front of the book. Whereas I will be adding a little bit more focal areas in a moment and adding thicker layers of this color of acrylic to just certain points where I really want to highlight, like those eyelids on the inside of that black area. Just a little bit more acrylic, a little bit more intense color. Right there, just a little bit. You want your book cover to be uneven, which is typically not the goal when you're working with something with nail art. You want things to be even. This is the opposite of that case. You want it to be uneven. Fit your cover back onto your book. Make sure it fits really well. Test the eyelid. Make sure the eyelid moves. Once you're happy with the whole system, everything seems secure in place, the cover looks gorgeous, etc., etc., add the same original color of brown, the darker shade, to attach the book cover to the book and make the spine of the book going down the end. As you are adding this little bit, make sure that you don't allow the acrylic to flood down the sides of the pages. So as you get towards the ends of the spine, just kind of watch it. Make sure that it doesn't go too far. As you can see, I press it and then I kind of catch it on the other side. Make sure it doesn't go where it's not supposed to. Add a little bit more to round it out. That first coat was just to get a base layer of the color down and to make sure that the book cover was actually fully attached to the book, because if it were to shift at all and it would move to where it didn't fit properly with the eyeball, then your whole system would not work. I'm going to go back to my black acrylic and add a thin bar down this the one side of the book cover, kind of going up and over the spine a little bit. That's going to be for the base of the snake area. So this is just a really thin rectangle all the way down. After you have that thin rectangle sculpted and it's nice and smooth and even, at least, somewhat. Same thing here. Doesn't actually have to be smooth and even and perfect. After you have that black bar done, while you're waiting for that to cure, because you can't sculpt the snake on top of it immediately, you have to let it harden for a little while. You can take your original shade of brown acrylic and you can sculpt the fingers that are holding the spine together. So I'm going to start in the middle with the middle finger, and then I'm going to work my way out. I am going to sculpt 5 fingers. I don't know how many were on the original book. If you are a hardcore, diehard Hocus Pocus fan, you probably might know that, and you may want to make it perfectly, but 5 fit really well, and it seemed appropriate to me for there to be 5 because it's like the one hand. So we've got the one in the middle, which you can line up with where the eyeball is, and then do 2 to the side, and then do 2 to the other side. Press the fingers back and forth a little bit to get them all evened out. Add the little fingernail. Don't worry about overly detailing those fingers on the side. If you want to do more detail on them with acrylic paint, you can, but they are somewhat abstract in the movie as well. They aren't super, like, you don't ever see them super up close, at least not that I can recall. And so it seems like if they're just a little bit kind of like a if you know, you know on the side, that seems to be the appropriate way to do it. And then I'm going to take more of my black acrylic and I'm going to actually sculpt the little snake that's going down the side. This is a really hard detail to see in the video, the way that the snake turned out, but he's really cute. He's just a little wiggly snake. And now for the nail, to keep it simple, I'm going to apply a layer of black gel polish, and then I'm going to apply some black holographic powder over the top of it, which is absolutely gorgeous. The video does not do this color justice. We're just going to add that gorgeous black glitter over the top of it, and then I'm going to apply a layer of gel sealer over the top of the glitter to seal it in place. Once that is done, then you are going to actually scuff the surface of your gel sealer a little bit in the middle of the nail where I'm going to be placing the book. Lay some clear acrylic on top of the area you just scuffed. Press the book in place, hold it until it really begins to kind of keep its own position. Once that's done, flip the book or turn the nail a little bit on its side and apply some more clear acrylic underneath it to fully secure the book to the nail. You don't want to rely just on that first little bit of acrylic. You want to always add a little bit more just to, you know, have a little bit of sense of security. Now with acrylic paint, I'm going to start doing all of the details on the book that I feel like I need to add, ones that I just think really will sell it. The biggest thing to do with this is that you want to make sure that you obviously detail the eye. If it's just a white ball, it doesn't necessarily look like an eye, so you have to add the eye color, you have to add the pupil, but then you want to make sure that you had all the seams and all the stitching on your flesh book. So in all of the little indents I made, I just lined them with black, and then using an off-white acrylic, I'm going to be adding the little crisscrossy stitches going all across. I'm going to add a little bit of a gold color to the inside of the eye. The eye almost looks like it's glowing. So that little bit of metallic gold really sells that I'm alive look for the eyeball. I'm going to add a little bit of highlighting and detailing to my fingers on the side. Again, they don't have to be super detailed and super realistic. As long as they're kind of a, oh yeah, that is a finger. I think that is exactly what's needed. After you finish doing the little details, add a little bit of a shadow around them with black paint. Add the black in the middle of your eyeball for the pupil. And then I'm going to take some chrome gel. So this is a gel that it's basically like a no wipe top coat, but it's specifically supposed to be better for chrome powders. After that's cured, I'm going to apply just a very thin dusting of a blue purple duochrome over the black areas. So I just applied that chrome gel on top of the snake and on top of the ring around the eyeball. I'm just going to add that touch of chrome. It's a matte top coat over the book that has any painting on it, so the skin area, and then on to the spine, some gel sealer over the top of the snake and over the top of that ring around the eyeball, and then just a glazing of gel sealer over the eye. Make sure you don't get any gel sealer on top of the eyelid because that'll glue it in place. Cure that, and then you can have the utter enjoyment of playing with this book. It is so cool, and if you are doing a bigger part of a whole Hocus Pocus set, this would be an adorable little element to include. Just the fact that the eyeball opens and closes is just such a fun little thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I know all these Halloween videos are my favorite time of year. All the spooky stuff is definitely a pick-me-up, if you can imagine, and I will see you all next time. Bye!